We at NMSDC recognize that educating and developing MBEs is critical to preparing the network of minority business owners for capital access and long-term business success. We want to help those seeking access to narrow down the stages of investment, forms of capital, and requirements for funding. Brought to you by the generous donation from UPS, this Access to Capital series will offer tips and insights directly from investors seeking minority-owned ventures.
Welcome to NMSDC's Access to Capital series. This series is a continuation of a conversation that we held in Austin, speaking to capital investors in the network and really understanding what are their requirements and the businesses that they are seeking. Today, we have with us Mr. G. Winston Smith. Mr. Smith is the president of the Business Consortium Fund and of Triad Investments LP. So you are managing two different funds.
Correct.
Okay, so I would love to learn about both of them.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit more about the Business Consortium Fund, what that is,
Okay.
and what the requirements are for businesses to connect
Excellent.
to that.
So the official name of the
Okay.
Business Consortium Fund is the National Minority Supplier Development Council Business Consortium Fund, Inc.
Oh.
It is a not-for-profit,
Okay.
and so we call it the BCF,
Okay.
BCF Business Consortium Fund. It was created some 32 years ago as an outgrowth of the National Minority Supplier Development Council with the sole purpose of providing capital, debt or equity,
Okay.
to NMSDC, National Minority Supplier Development Council, certified MBEs
Right.
that are doing business with national or regional corporate members of the NMSDC.
Okay.
And so the requirement, those are two of the requirements right there. One, that you be a certified MBE, certified by one of the National Minority Supplier Development Council regional councils or regional affiliates. Secondly, that you're doing business somewhere in the supply chain of with a national or regional corporate member
Right.
of the NMSDC. Third requirement is that you have been doing business for at least 3 years.
Okay.
We would like to have some track record there. We can be a little flexible about that.
Okay.
And the fourth requirement is something that we can figure out, and that is that your adjusted cash flow will cover your debt service by at least 1.2 times.
Okay.
And when we say adjusted cash flow, we're saying your EBITDA, your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And we adjust that with any one-time events that happened in the previous year. You may have had a major event that will not occur normally, and so we would add back the cash that event
I see.
consumed.
Okay.
And so we will adjust the cash that way.
Great,
Yeah.
great. And then in terms of the Triad Investments LP, how does that differ from NMSDC's Business Consortium Fund?
So let me also say about the Business Consortium Fund, the BCF, is that once those four pre-qualifying criteria are met, then we are industry and geography agnostic. We don't care what industry you're in.
Okay.
Some people think that it's bad, if you will, to be in the staffing business. They say, oh, there are all kinds of small businesses that are in the staffing business. Our view is if you're in the staffing business and you're certified as an MBE by an NMSDC council, then you've already been vetted once. If you have a contract with an NMSDC national or regional corporate member, then you are being vetted every day by that purchasing manager. And if you have that contract, then and you need cash, then we have something we can work with. And so we really are agnostic, let's just say, about your industry. And we lend nationally. We are a national lender. Our first loan was to a woman of color business in Houston, Texas. Today, that business is doing $80 million in revenue.
Wow.
We've loaned money we have loans outstanding right now to companies in California, Georgia, so we are a national lender.
That's incredible.
Now, Triad, on the other hand, is what is referred to as an SBA licensed, specialized small business investment company.
Got it.
Triad was acquired by the BCF over 20 years ago, with the idea that while the BCF has a expertise in debt financing, Triad is there for those companies that need equity capital. So Triad's capital is longer term and more patient.
Right.
The BCF's capital is 1 to 5 years, and we need it paid back.
Yeah.
Triad's capital can last 7 years, 10 years, or it can be treated as a mezzanine debt. Therefore, something not as impatient, if you will, as regular capital, as a debt, but a little more impatient than equity.
Right.
Or it can be treated as equity. Triad can also invest in a company and own equity shares in a company.
To that end, let me ask you, so I know we've said that pre-qualifications include minority businesses.
Yes.
My assumption is that this also applies to the Triad
Correct.
investment
That's
arm.
right.
But do you ever look at non-minority businesses and acquiring them to convert them to minority businesses?
We consider them to be portfolio companies because even though that is a term that is generally used in the private equity world, because we nurture our companies.
Right.
We've had companies that joined us that we've loaned money to that had negative net worth.
Wow.
But because of the relationship that those companies had with their customers and the passion that the owner had and the transparency that the owner provided, then we considered it to be a good loan. That one of those companies today is now significantly positive in terms of net worth. And so we know how to make those kinds of loans.
That absolutely helps in terms of the conversion. So it sounds that you're not necessarily converting companies.
No, but we look to our customers may do that. Our portfolio companies may do that. We have a company in California today that just acquired a company. Okay. And so it really doesn't matter to us if that company, the ethnicity of the owners of that company. Because once that company is acquired, then it is now owned, operated, and controlled by a certified minority business, already certified by an NMSDC council. So in that case, we will, if our portfolio company needed financing to complete that acquisition, we would provide the financing. We have a company today that is not in our portfolio, but was recommended to us by a regional council president because it is acquiring a company. It is a certified MBE. A regional council president recommended it to us or referred it to us, and we are working with that company to provide them with the debt that they need to complete that acquisition. And so whether a company is acquiring a minority company or a non-minority company, we're there to service the needs of NMSDC-certified MBEs.
It makes a ton of sense. Now, when I look at the two funds, I imagine there are different check sizes as it relates to what you're deploying.
Yes.
So let's look at Business Consortium. What is the smallest check that you've written?
$100,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So relatively small.
Yeah. The sweet spot, if you will, for the BCF, the space that we see we can be most helpful is in the $100,000 to $350,000 range. But I would tell you that that's a space that very few companies want to be in. Very few lenders want to be in that space. It takes time to underwrite that size loan, as much, probably a little more time than it takes to underwrite a $5 million loan where there's a lot of collateral and a lot of investment already. But that's the space that our companies need us to be in.
Yeah, it does seem, just in my limited experience and exposure to the capital world, that is a space where there are a lot of businesses out
Yes,
there
yes.
that need those smaller checks,
Yes.
but are unable to access the capital.
That
So
is
it is
correct.
refreshing to know
Yes.
that there is a resource available.
Yes.
How about on the Triad side?
Triad has done some larger transactions. However, I would tell you that our bylaws limit Triad as the bylaws limit BCF.
Okay.
However, we are not restricted.
Okay, explain that.
We have friends, and
Okay.
so and we have friends that have way more capital than we have.
Right.
So just on the BCF side, we have been involved just this year in transactions where the client needed $5 million to complete a particular transaction.
Yeah.
And so we took that transaction to a friend, in this case, a commercial bank,
Yeah.
okay, and they worked that transaction in a certain way. Now, at the end of the day, unfortunately, another commercial bank made the loan. But our NMSDC-certified MBE knew that they had an option with us. They probably got a better deal with the other commercial
Right,
bank,
Right.
but at least they knew that they could do that deal.
Yeah.
Okay?
And it sounds to me that, so it's not limited.
It is not at all limited.
If there are opportunities for businesses that are outside of your fund,
Correct.
you are happy to point them in that direction.
We will refer. We would love to always have some small participation because that's how we make our money.
Right.
Okay. And we can participate. We can participate in a major way, or we can participate in a minor way.
Right.
In some cases, a big deal, 5 million, 10 million, whatever, needs a small amount of debt to just get it over the hump. That small amount could be 500,000 or 750,000,
Yeah.
which is well within our range.
Right. So how large is your team at BCF? Is it a large team or is it
So
nimble?
our core team is small.
Okay.
But when we think about the network of friends and collaborators that we have, then you can imagine that the team, the greater team, is significant.
Yeah, it's very large.
Yes.
The reason I ask that question is I'm curious to know how many pitches you receive annually on both sides.
Okay.
Because I think that gives really great perspective as to the filtering that you have to do. And what I think is also very unique is that you have a lot of these businesses are pre-vetted. To your
That is
point.
correct. Right.
So that's
right.
a huge time
Right,
saver.
right.
How many pitches?
We think we're getting about 10 to 15 pitches per month.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Now, we intend to increase that.
Yeah.
We've spent some money and time focusing on our technology, our website.
Okay.
We're going to upgrade our website so that a potential borrower
Right.
can get their information to us and their application and their financial statements and all of the things that they need to submit as part of an application to us online.
I see.
We're going to use a technology that will allow us to do some analysis of those applications online and provide a recommendation, if you will, to our chief lending officer. And so that will allow us to handle a lot more throughput.
Yes.
And we expect to have that kind of technology in place by sometime later this year.
I love that you're actually investing in technology.
Yes.
Because just from the corporate side, I see that is where everyone is focusing.
Yes.
Is if you do not have technology backing your business, I
Yes.
don't care if you're a promo product supplier or a chair manufacturer.
Correct.
Having that touch point with technology
Yes.
is becoming fundamental
Yes.
to business
Yes.
success. So I love that you're doing
The
that.
whole financial industry, there's a term of art now in the financial industry called fintech.
Yes.
Yes, and companies are using financial technology to be able to process a lot of loans, provide decisions quickly
Right.
to the applicant, and in some cases even fund loans a lot faster.
Yeah.
You will find, though, in some cases, the input is fast and initial response is fast, but the underwriting process still takes a little time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said something earlier about just underwriting the deal. I believe it was Magic Johnson who mentioned in one of his talks that it takes the same amount of energy
Yes.
to close $1 million deal
Right.
as it does to close $1 billion deal.
That's right.
So
That's right.
whenever you are looking at your pool of applicants, clearly you want to go where you can make reasonable margins,
Right.
as every business owner should. But I do, again, love the fact that you're touching those businesses that need smaller pools
Yeah.
of capital.
To Magic's point, I mean, so you can imagine if you have a fund that can fund a $5 million transaction or a $20 million transaction,
Right.
then your appetite for a $350,000 transaction
Right.
doesn't exist. There's no appetite for that one, right?
And I think it's good because this way people, the audience, is aware that those sort of large transactions are happening, and you have to know
Correct.
where to go and who to connect with in terms of the funds that you're looking for.
That is correct. That's
Yeah.
right. And if you don't know, then call us. Call the BCF because we know. Remember, we spent some time with you
Yes.
and a couple of other funds on stage in Austin back in October.
Yes.
I have them in my contacts list.
Oh,
I have the owners
wonderful.
of those funds, and I continue to meet people that have large funds that they control or to which they have access.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Actually, Fred
Yes.
Royal, he has come in and we've done this discussion, and Richard Powell we're hoping to get and bring in
Excellent.
soon. This is really to continue those conversations and to dive a little bit deeper. Is there a success story that you have that perhaps you would like to share?
Yes. I mentioned a company to you that's in California.
Yes.
This is an interesting company. It's in a space that I would not have imagined. Even though when I was in corporate, we used that kind of company. Okay. And so when I realized that we had that kind of company in our portfolio, I was pretty excited about that. But when we started with that company, its revenue was, I want to say, single digit in the millions, maybe $8-9 million. Today, that company is pretty close to $20 million in revenue. It has been in our portfolio about 5 years, and we believe that company will be with us for a little while longer.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that companies can come into the portfolio and do well and grow in revenue and still not be commercial bankable.
Right.
There can always be a quirk in the balance sheet that by which that company falls outside of the parameters of a commercial bank. And so the fact that a company is in our portfolio and is not in the portfolio of a large commercial bank is not a negative.
Right.
It just means that there's just a little more time needed to get the balance sheet in a certain way, to get the track record in a certain way. Meanwhile, that company is acquiring companies.
Yeah.
Okay, it's acquiring customers. It is winning awards, and so we're happy, and that company is happy.
Yeah, I've heard, I have a good friend of mine refers to minority businesses as what we call domestic emerging markets.
Yes.
Meaning that it is so much potential.
Yes.
An area where there's so much potential, but it's highly underbanked.
Highly underbanked. That's
Yeah.
right. And oftentimes, well-heeled financial people, people with significant resources behind them, will pass by those companies on their way to the airport to go to a country that doesn't speak their language.
That's right.
That where the agreements are not even in English, and where they don't know people and don't have a network, and invest over there, and miss the opportunity to invest here.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that to the extent we solve the capital problem, the access to capital issue for minority businesses, then we enhance economic activity, not just in the United States, because as the United States goes, so goes the world.
Well, the beauty of the network is that I think there may be some investors in this network that
Excellent.
you could connect with
Excellent.
and work together with. Winston, is there any other thoughts that you would like to leave us with as it relates to investing in minority businesses and the way that those businesses can access the capital?
I'd like to encourage everyone to go to our website.
Yes.
And to the extent that companies need capital, go to our website, bcfcapital.com.
Great, we'll put it on the screen.
Excellent. And submit an application, learn more about us, get started early. The time to start looking for capital is not when it's needed. Okay?
Excellent
It's
advice.
when you don't need it.
Yeah.
I encourage companies to have a business plan. Write out your business plan. Every business owner has a business plan in their head. But when you need capital, at that point there's a little stress, and oftentimes you don't want to take the time to move from the head to paper.
Right.
So write it out now. Have a pro forma cash flow and a pro forma income statement.
Right.
Those are critical tools for a banker.
Right.
And we are bankers.
Right.
At the end of the day, we are non-bank lenders. We are alternative lenders to commercial banks.
Right.
But we are, at the end of the day, bankers. And we want to make good deals. Because the people that put their capital with us, A, they expect to get it back.
Right.
And there have been some challenges in the past around that. But B, that capital needs to be reused.
Right.
There are minority businesses that need that capital for growth. And so we want to make good deals.
Right.
And so those would be the things that I would emphasize. Business plan, projections, pro forma financial statements, and good quality financial statements.
I love it. I love it. This has been very informative. I feel like there's so much more that we could dive into, but our time is limited.
Excellent. Okay.
I know we will be seeing you at conference.
Yes, you will. I will be there.
Come time for Atlanta. So
Great.
we will be on the lookout for you,
Excellent.
meaning myself, my peers,
Okay.
and I'm sure a lot of the minority businesses who are tuning in will also
Great.
be looking out for you.
Great.
Thank you so much for your time,
Thank you.
Winston. Truly
Thank you.
appreciate it.
It's happy to be here. Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to learn more and follow this series.